When I give you a whistle, every say prrrr, prrrr. When I give you a whistle, man, you say prrrr.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Prrrr. My name is Adjor, and yes, the much-awaited big interview with the legend. It's on, Charlie. Legend can house. Hey, we do all. Make it clap, guys. Charlie, I'm going to say poo. Yes, we poo the legend. It don't be easy. Sure, you know the times that you do sports journalism. But yeah, I have a short story before I introduce Big Mike. I call him Big Mike. My daddy, he doesn't like the word daddy when it comes for me, so let me just say Big Mike.
Sad.
Yeah, but I want to share a story before I introduce him. So I remember after lockdown, I had a job. I was working at a very, very top company. I won't mention the name, and it was quite boring for me there. So this sports talking, we call ourselves football talkers, not sports journalists. I mean, because we're not going to a new school to acquire that certificate. So I was working in a very, very top firm, and it was quite boring there for me. So I applied to TV3 as an intern. So when I brought my application letter that day, I saw the legend walking to his office. I was sitting far away, and I had no protocol. I came with my uncle. I had zero protocol. And when I came, submitted the letter, and I was sitting there. I saw you walking to your office, like, let me approach you and just introduce myself. Say hi. Something like, oh, sit down. Don't go. Don't go. And I slowly watched you enter your office. I was like, damn, where is the confidence to go and approach the legend? So I started, like, no, one day, I will sit on high tables with Michael Oti Adjei. And today, wow, fast forward, look at us. That's why I always preach to you guys that you can do it. Blessings are in everything you want to do. You work hard, you push. Look, Adjor. I don't do Pro 3 yesterday. Then Oti Adjei, hey, if you guys easy, Charlie guys, let's welcome you again. So welcome to this is our home. This is where we cook.
Yeah.
And thanks for the warm welcome when I visited your side, and I was very, very grateful. I'm happy you came.
I'm happy too. I think, yeah. So that day when you came, you were doing something that we all basically do for our industry. We had a program. You honored us with your presence. It's not a paid appearance, so it was important to us that you showed up. I always say that when you're a media house, you treat your guests with the utmost respect. I think people make the mistake of sometimes saying, "Oh, I put the guy on TV." No, you didn't put him on TV. You used him for your content.
Yeah.
You used him to fill the airtime. You used him to have a conversation. He has good numbers, so you used that to pull in. And because I sign off on almost every guest appearance, I had a fair idea. So yeah, I was basically just doing my job.
To end the story, you guys didn't pick me though.
We didn't pick him.
for the interview.
Well, it was. I always say to people who want to come on internship in our place.
Yeah.
I think if you or your uncle had spoken to me, it would have been a
different level. Yeah.
It's also possible that your letters got locked up in a long process.
Exactly.
Or that at that stage we had overcome the internship request.
Yeah.
But I think some also because it's something that a lot of people who want to intern with media houses tend to need to know is that between June, there's a certain period where there are so many people trying to intern in a media house at the same time. And this is very easy to tell. It's in the period when there's a long vacuum. Yeah. Your chances are always better if the department you want to go to says to the company, I want a gap in graphic designing.
Okay.
I have a gap in production assistants. I have a gap in a young, vibrant guy who has interest in sports who can do the runaround. So it's always a good idea, and this is simply just a professional hack I'm giving people.
Exactly.
Always a good idea to go through the department that you want to go. If you want to go to news, it's always a better idea to make sure that news has a need for that, because really internship, too many people are walking into media houses and they're just interning for interning's sake.
Exactly.
They are bored, they don't want to stay home, so they show up.
Yeah. I'm sure if I approached you, maybe it would have been different, but I'm happy. All was in God's plan.
Things always work better.
Yes.
There's a principle of I have a joke I play with my friends. When you see a nice girl and you're unable to say hello to her, destiny will bring you back together. I feel
Nice. It's got solid bar from the legend. Baba, I hope you are doing well. Then.
I'm very well.
Let's start our discussion. Let me ask you, what was that dream job for you growing up? Like growing up as a child, the dream job for you, telling your friends, I want to be this, that. What was that one dream job?
I was one of those who toyed with a lot of things. I toyed with a lot of things in my mind. So to give you an idea, at some point, I was really convinced I could become a medical doctor.
Oh, wow.
It was so strong that I studied physics, chemistry, biology at Pope John.
Okay.
I discovered.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
I discovered after the first year that I was pretty bad at it. I used to lie in bed and learn physics. So it was pretty obvious to me that I was not going to. But I'd always had a strong love for reading, like started from when my mother, the Makola woman, started buying me books and taking me to the Ghana Library Board in Accra Central to read, because I was in shift school. So if I'm in the afternoon, I read in the morning. By 11 o'clock or 11:30, I get on the trotro and then I go to school in Newtown. And then if I go in the morning, when I close, I go to the library. When my mother closes from her shop, I come home with her. Okay. Now that reading, and in Newtown there were a lot of newsstands and the rest. So and the pages that were most visible sometimes, if the adults were reading, were the back pages. Okay. So that then gave me a bit more interest in the work of people like Samuel Kisiedu, Kwabena Yeboah. There was Kembedi Akon. Perpetual Crane, so some of those names, some of you will not be familiar with. And it triggered a journalism interest. But when I was going to secondary, by the time I was ready to go to Pope John, this was in 93, because I completed in 96. It was almost impossible not to want to do science. It was a hip thing to do. Okay. You go to JSS, you get 9 once, you get 10 once, you must do science. So I went to Pope John, did science, I never liked it. Everybody in Pope John knew that I would do something related to public speaking one day. Okay. Because I was either always arguing, always in the library. I was really abreast with current affairs. And by SS2, I knew I was going to be a journalist. So when I came back home, I just said to my father one morning, and then bless you. So I said, please get me forms from JIJ when you go. That's what I want to do. But
you went to Legon to read com skills?
So that was so my schooling sort of been split in a lot of parts.
Okay.
So the School of Journalism was initially a 2-year course. Okay. So I went to Pope John 7 months after SS. So when the results came, I was in Pope John that quickly, in the same class with the likes of Stan Dugbe, Atukwamina Dazi, around the same period with quite a number of very prominent leaders in the Ghanaian media at the moment. So you do the degree, the diploma. Okay. But at the time, the highest qualification you could get as a journalist was a diploma. Okay. Then I worked off the back of that for a long time. I was one of those people who thought, you're a journalist, you're a good journalist, what do you need school for? Yeah. But luckily, at a certain point, GIJ then came up with what they call a top-up program. Okay. So you top up for 2 years and then you get your first degree. So it's like you've done 2 years at diploma, you top up another 2 years, you get your first degree. So I did that eventually. And then I decided to go to com studies at the University of Ghana to do a master's in communication studies. I did it. That one was also for it was a year's course. And then I ran away. I left to go and cover the World Cup in Brazil and didn't finish my dissertation, so still struggling with it.
So where did sports journalism come in for you, the love for the game? Did you enter this field as a sports journalist, or just journalism, maybe politics or different vibes?
I was very clear what I wanted to do was sports journalism. I went into journalism because I like sports. Okay.
Did you play the game?
No, I find it too much work. My other principle is that the thing that other people are doing to earn 300,000, I won't do for fun.
Wow, okay.
So it's like how your boss, Kojo Sheldon, decided that if he was going to talk on social media and he was going to make videos for fun, he might as well make money out of it. Yeah. So I was very clear in my mind that if there was a capacity to monetize that, I wanted to earn a living from it. My reading also started with sports articles.
Yes, that is why.
And I grew up in Newtown, where coast football was so popular that when there were games in the community, you could walk. I started going to the stadium very early to watch Hearts, to watch Olympics, to watch under 17. I remember my mother's friend would pick me up to the stadium literally every day.
Wow.
You know, so yeah, I was very clear. I went to journalism school because I wanted to do sports. Yes.
Okay. Then do you have kids?
Yes, I have one.
How one?
Yes.
Oh, okay. When are you getting more?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm not,
But how do you?
I try not to be sentimental about kids.
How do you
It's too much
combine
work.
taking care of your kid and also this work load on you all the time, traveling around the world, doing this? How do you juxtapose the two, parenting and working in this?
It's a complicated balance, and mine is. I think sometimes it's just really the sort of personal commitment you bring to it. To be honest with you, look, anything we find most valuable, we do. I take pretty good care of my son. I like to think. Luckily, I earn reasonably well enough to give him some of the best things that he wants. But I'm also lucky. It's not lucky. I don't live with him, so it makes it. In terms of my time, it makes it less tasking. But it also means that I need to be very conscious. So if you're looking for me on weekends, it's very difficult. If you ask me to do this on a weekend, sometimes I might use it as an excuse. But many times it's because I need to take him to a swimming lesson or need to take him to the playground or need to do something else with him. So I've told a lot of people that I sometimes I want to, because you want to be intentional about co-parenting, you become very clear in your mind. So for me, that's been the advantage. I can't pretend, and I have become a lot more conscious when I'm managing people to understand what being married or having kids and the rest, because these are things that I don't have. I've never been married before, so I don't know how. When you go home, your wife and the pressure they put on you or the pressure you put on yourself and that sort of thing. And in my management capacity, I've tried to understand people a bit more. But with me, I am one of those people who have been literally my whole life dedicated to football. So I'll give you an idea. I went to London recently to cover the Blackstars, the city that I love because I've been going there for quite some time now. And for 4 days, never got out of the hotel until it was match day. Didn't get out of my seat in the hotel lobby because it was prime spot. Whenever somebody was coming in, I could see them easily. Wow. And I could film them and all that. Never got on the bus, never got on the train, had no time for friends. Everything was done within that hotel. Because for me, it was work and it was nothing more. That's the sort of dedication that I put in work. And that's what sometimes makes me too demanding when I deal with other people.
I get it. Means you're an introvert?
No, I'm not.
Growing up, were you an introvert?
Sometimes I struggle with those labels. I think you are in different phases. You know, there are days when you are. I can have a good conversation with anybody. But I am. Also, I would like to think emotionally intelligent enough to know when and where to keep quiet. So when I started working with somebody like Kwabena Yeboah, for instance, he will walk you into very powerful spaces where nobody was interested in what you had to say until you had been asked. Very wealthy, prominent people, whether you with if you go and visit Tony Yeboah, what do you have to say? You've got to keep quiet and listen. My silence in a group is always strategic. Okay. I don't want to talk. It's not because I don't have anything to say, because I am conscious that talking too much is sometimes a weakness. Some people think it's a lack of confidence. Trust me, I don't lack any. I am just very, very conscious. I could sit with, and personally, I think it served me well, especially within the national team setting and in covering people, because people like to deal with those they consider discreet. People like to deal with people who are not loudmouths. People like to deal with people who they think respects, put them on a certain pedestal. So I have a group of friends when we do our, I have a really group of solid, very successful friends, and we sit together maybe on a Saturday night, or their families are together and we are having conversations. I can have any conversation in the world. But when I go to a group where I am not familiar, way more successful people than me, way wealthier people who are industry captains, have built property, businesses, and the rest, I'd rather keep quiet and listen to them.
Okay. You've mentioned Kwabena Yeboah twice. Is he your role model?
Yes.
Wow. Direct role model.
So I was, again, I mentioned, so when I started reading, it was a lot of Samuel Kisiedu.
Okay.
Then I also left Pope John in 96. And at the time, Joy had started being on air. And I loved Kweku Sechiadu. He was like, like one of those guys that I just loved everything about him. So I read a lot of his articles. He was then for the BBC. He used to write for the BBC quite often. So when articles became a big thing online, he used to do a lot of that. And then there was a BBC Focus on Africa magazine. So I drew a lot of inspiration from Kweku as well.
Okay.
The marketing manager of Stanbic Bank, Mawuku Afajenu, has had a big impact on my life because he was my lecturer in journalism school. And he literally from the first day in school when he gave us an assignment, me and him just hit off like that, and he's been. But Kwabena Yeboah is the one who sharpened my journalism skills the most.
Okay. Wow.
It was because when I left GIJ, this was in 99. Then I had a friend, Tony Owusu-Amofame, he's so rest in peace. He used to work at Radio Gold. And I said to him one day that, Tony, because I've always loved writing more than talking. I think writing is, for some reason, I always thought that it was a higher level of intellect in journalism. These days, I've sort of changed my opinion because it takes a lot of work to talk and keep people engaged. But I said to Tony one day that, look, I want to write for Africa Sports because it was one of 2 newspapers in Ghana, sports papers, Graphic Sports, Africa Sports. And I like the Africa Sports model better. So I was an intern at Radio Gold, had become close to Tony Owusu-Amofame and the likes of Fifi Banson and the rest. And I said, I want to do an article I want to start writing. So they did an introduction with Kwabena Yeboah. I went to that first meeting with an article in hand. He read it. I think the question he asked me was, how long have you been writing? I said, I just left journalism school. And then he basically, his words were encouraging. He asked me to write on a weekly basis. Down a year, 2 later, I was literally managing the editorial aspect of the newspaper and everything. So he told me quite a number of things. One, that you couldn't do journalism the traditional way. I learned from Kwabena Yeboah that you have to be really, and these are things that you are not really taught in journalism school. You have to be really conscious about what you put on your front page. Long before we were doing what we call these days data-driven decisions. So you will make a data-driven decision about what video you will put on Instagram or the part socials of the video you put that will trend. And that will draw more people to your YouTube and the rest. He knew that his newspaper's biggest base was in Kumasi. So he was always looking for an angle on that score. He had a great idea of who on the front page sold the newspaper more. So he used to laugh at me that I liked straightforward headlines. But I learned very early that in journalism, you need to be conscious. The factors you take into consideration even then are important. And I just learned the habit of being fearless with him, and I absolutely loved the time
you still stayed relevant because social media came. People will read your articles. How did you do it differently?
Because I see trends early. One of the first jobs I got out of school before I went back to work with Africa Sports was at My Joy Online. So I had seen it a bit early. I also knew that I wouldn't, 1, earn enough, 2, not be relevant enough if I just did local outlets. So I would search online and find whether it was Daily Soccer, whether it was, I think I wrote for yard.co.za, a number of platforms in South Africa. I would actively search and pitch articles. So I knew that the trend was moving away from hardcore newspapers to, and I read a lot. So whether I was reading The Economist or the Time magazine and the rest, I always knew the trends of the industry. So I always adjusted. And then I found writing platforms. I used to write for Statesman, for The Independent. I wrote for Ghanaian Chronicle for a long time. All these were newspapers. But in the same time, one of the first articles I did was just one day, using Dorosimi Thomas to say, to get a contact to the BBC, because I went to interview Neodate Lamte for Africa Sports. In my mind, the job was to chase people I liked, and I grew up on Odate.
Okay.
So I went to interview Odate, and the more I looked at the Odate article, I started thinking to myself, this is bigger than a Ghana story. This guy was supposed to be Africa's next big thing. Everybody's paid attention to him. You go online, you read about him. So I said, I'll pitch this story to the BBC. I wrote a simple email those times from, there was an internet cafe at Papaya then, because you didn't have internet in your office. So I sent an email, said, look, I have this article that it talks about A, B, C, D. But again, I had not been taught. I had learned pitching myself. So I sort of detailed everything I wanted that was in the article that would be of interest to them. So I was basically practicing, if you're making a request, make sure it appeals to the interest of the other party. And I got an email back 10, 15 minutes to say, we are interested in the article.
Wow. Awesome.
I had literally written the article already.
Wow.
And that was the first time I was published on the BBC. So I always knew that we were going to move towards this trend.
Okay.
I was encouraged by Gary to take Twitter seriously. And then we sort of, at every stage, and then he encouraged me to take, the Facebook public page seriously. So at every stage, the one that I didn't take seriously, and me and Ibrahim Sani chat about regretting it, was YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Because when you consider the number of times we traveled around and the opportunities and the openings we got, that would have been something great. But it's not something I regret much. At every step, I've been acutely aware of where the industry is going. And that's why I always say to a lot of people in the industry, read as much as you can.
Read, guys. You for read. You want 10 sports journalists, they read. You go watch videos, no go read. You go day back. I've heard read like 10 times from the legend. You have to read. You know how I'm reading articles. Shout out to Lekem, daddy. You make her read this guy articles anyhow. I don't like reading. Lekem, what is? Lekem?
No.
Lekem, I'm sure you know his face. He's a very top low-key guy because of work. He doesn't do much sports.
Okay.
When I started this job, this football thing, I thought I'm not a sports journalist. But you please read the big boys, their stuff. Just read. You see what will happen. And I've been reading and reading and reading and reading. So yeah, why I say this, but let's talk Blackstars. Let's talk that. And coaching. I'm a young coach coming up. Obviously, I cannot pinpoint one coach in this country that I can dig out his thesis and read from him and learn from him. We don't have coaches in this country who are inspiring the next generation like me. I'm here and I'm scared. Let's go outside the country and do our coaching courses, because that's where we'll get more inspiration. That's where we'll learn more. Do you feel like we are failing ourselves as a country with regards to coaching? And what can we do to improve that field?
So I think that, you break that down into areas where the lack of material that you face in coaching is not unique to coaching. If you want to read about the giants of journalism in Ghana, where do you go? You want to read about Adjor His, you have to find her book. You want to read about how Kweku Sechiado impacted journalism and how he thinks about it. There's not a collective book for it. We've not captured Kwabena Yeboah's memoir. We didn't get one from Komla Dumo before he passed, unfortunately. Sifa Kain's thoughts are not documented. But he was the face. He's been the face of morning show, public, and crucially, the pioneer of vernacular radio public, for a very, very long time. So we have a national problem with documenting
the legends.
Yes. As a way of encouraging the younger generation. So too many people now have to go through almost the pattern that I had to go through if I was not lucky to meet Kwabena Yeboah, then your coaching could become better because then I could one day decide that, oh, Adjor wants to be a coach. Kwesi Appiah is in town. Okay, Adjor, let's meet Kwesi Appiah here.
Yes,
It becomes a...
yeah.
So, unfortunately, you won't find, but at a systemic level, yes, we are failing young coaches. What the GNFA has done has been to set up new coaching systems and try to benchmark the coaching qualifications to the ones that they do at CAF and UEFA and the rest, which I hope develops. But to be good in any profession, you don't just need to go and sit in a classroom to learn.
Yeah.
You need an efficient internship, mentorship system that allows people to look up to the right people, to learn from the right people, and to actively, even before they are neck deep into it, find the people who can help them practice everything they do already.
Oh. Okay. So going forward, what should the GFA also do to help the young ones? Aside the coaching courses, that it's not enough for me. I feel like
I think they need deliberate internships, 2 deliberate mentorship schemes.
Okay.
There will be a lot of coaches. Kwesi Appiah, there's Maxwell Kunedru. There are a lot of coaches in the system. What are you doing to set up a quick mentorship system that says, look, when we go to the classroom and you pass your CAF license B, I'm a member of the Rotary Club. We have something, we call it my Rotary buddy. Somebody who keeps you in check, who sort of runs you through the Rotary system. To have a similar one and say, we are making a deliberate effort to pitch young coaches with older coaches. We'll do a check-in every month. We'll check in from the young person, what they've learned, what the difficulties of the relationship were. There has to be something as conscious as that for it to have any value.
Daddy, you've covered a lot of Blackstars.
Why do you call me daddy?
Okay, Big Mike. You've covered a lot of Blackstars games, so many tournaments, AFCONs, World Cups. At what point do you realize that we've lost our Blackstars? At what point for you? That our Blackstars... It's a change. Something's not clicking somewhere. At what point for you? Yeah.
I honestly think it was. I like this guy.
Young legend.
I like what he's done. No, I think it was. So, I think it was the Nations Cup of 2021.
Okay.
When we brought Ratumir. Sorry, Milovan Raivat back.
He's your friend.
No. So I have, on the outside, I look like everybody's my friend, but I'm a very withdrawn person.
I know. Already.
Yeah. On the outside, it's like everybody's my friend.
Yeah.
But when I work in an industry, I want to be nice, but I want to be professional.
Exactly.
And when you cover the Blackstars, it's the easiest way. So I would interview Thomas Partey, and I don't even have Thomas Partey's phone number.
Wow.
I've covered the DIU since he was literally a kid, because then I used to visit his father quite a lot. I remember covering him in the 2009 African Under-20, and not once have I exchanged maybe a text message with Dede before.
Wow.
So I try to keep it as professional. Of course, I have friends and all that. So, but Raivat was, Raivat, I was convinced because I covered him actively in the 2010 campaign and during that tournament, and the decisions he made when we were in South Africa, I was convinced he could change anything. So when Raivat came in and then we went to the tournament and we were so bad, and because I know a lot of the backstories about the things that happened during the competition, I got to a stage and I thought, if Raivat couldn't fix it, this is a bigger problem than we think. Because I am seeing young, smart, brilliant players.
Yes.
And then we can't do anything. So for me, that tournament in Cameroon was the real awakening. It was the moment I began to think, hang on, there's something wrong.
We've lost our Blackstars.
And then when Chris Hughton came in, I was backing him all the way. One of the most experienced coaches we had. And then it went bad again. I knew that there was a problem.
Okay. Now, in 2018, you said this legend, and I quote, Ghanaians do not owe you any gratitude. Oti Adjei fires French Blackstars players. You were with you were City FM.
Yeah,
You said that? Yeah.
Raman, yeah. So you see, one of the issues that
It's like a bomb. When you come to Peru, you say a bomb.
No,
you
but
throw a bomb.
I had because you every time you cover the Blastars, there are these players who are getting to the end of their careers, and they keep saying, "Oh, we did so much for the country. The country is not being great. It's not treating us nice and all that." And I keep asking myself, "What did you do?" You understand? This is not to downplay the effort of anybody.
Yeah.
You know, like yesterday was 19 years since Asamoah Gyan and Sule Muntari scored our first World Cup goals.
Yeah.
They were huge. But yesterday, there were several Ghanaians tweeting, posting about it, talking about it.
Yeah.
They were paying homage to two people who were absolute legends.
Legends here.
Now, I think that there is generally a problem when it gets to the stage where too many of our players don't know that the applause has quietened down. Exit the stage. They make it a forced process. So I had a big problem with an ex-goalkeeper who was convinced that I had brought in another goalkeeper to take his place just because the goalkeeper was my friend.
Can you mention his name?
Oh, I know. Richard Kingston. Richard Kingston was so convinced that I had a hand in bringing Adam Kwarasi into the Blackstars.
Wow.
And that he had quickened his exit from the team and called me on phone and had some pretty unpleasant words for me. But
wow.
You know, Yumbu so
solid Yumbu.
So you say what you want to say, but like my friend Songo says, you fire in a professional
way.
But those things happen a lot, and then you move on.
Okay.
So my conviction has always been that this country takes very good care of its footballers. It pays them reasonably well. I agree with the footballers. There are certain things that we don't know, but I think generally on the balance, we've taken good care of our footballers.
But as someone would say, someone like Jerry Akameko came to the Blackstars, got injured, and we didn't see him play football again.
Those things you need to, but those things you need to take care of with systems.
Okay.
You need proper insurance policies. You need a department within the GFA that keeps track of all those players and the rest. The players have club size too. FIFA has policies where if a player gets injured at international level, it has a means of taking care of that, all that. So all that is there. Where I don't understand is a player comes to the Blackstars. First, bear in mind that the Blackstars collapse is 9 out of 10 times a function of what you're doing at club level.
100%.
You will find a coach who says that, look, I like this player so much, whether he's playing or not, I don't care. So Richard Kingston, famously, for instance, played more games in a certain period for the Blackstars than he played for his club side. And you can check this. This was when he was at Wigan, when he went to Galatasaray and the rest. He played more games for the Blackstars than he played at club side. That's a coach's decision, and that's all right.
Yeah.
But generally, you pick players based on how well they are doing at club sides. But what we have a lot of these players tell us is that because they've played for us, mind you, got paid nice bonuses of 10,000. They say they earn a lot of money, so it's not the same. I will give them the benefit of that. But generally, we are reputed to be some of the best paying national teams in the world.
Yeah.
Maybe what we are not doing is that we are not investing the monies we make into good pitches, into the sort of thing that will make them happy, which is the ones they complain about. But I've always been convinced that we take good care of them.
Okay.
I think it can get better. I think we can consider their welfare a bit more. When your players upgrade to a certain level, they need certain kind of hotels, they need this, they need that, and that's what they ask for. You give them.
Okay.
But I think overall we've been very good to them.
Let's talk about your worst experience covering the Blackstars. What would that one be? do you remember?
I think it was the first one.
Okay.
The first major tournament. This was in, I think it was 2002.
Oh, okay.
So me and Tony once again, so it was me, Tony, Ibrahim Sani, Dara. I had started writing for Africa Sports, and I really wanted to go to the Nations Cup. So I used to write for the Ghana Airways in Flight magazine because then my lecturer, Maoko, was the marketing manager there. So I used the articles to trade off for a plane ticket to Bamako.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I had $200 in my pocket for the period. I was good friends with AC and Derek Watson, but I just wanted to be in that environment. And when I knew I was in for trouble, was the first night myself and Tony spent 2 hours looking for a hotel in Bamako when we went out to get our accreditation. Basically, we went into such a bad hotel that we couldn't figure out the direction to the hotel. And I went to see Abid Pele in the in the more elite hotel. And when I looked at the hotel, I was sad going back and I couldn't find it. But it was also just the journey between Bamako to Mopti to, we had to sleep on student mattresses in student hostels and the rest. It was tough, but it was the most beautiful experience I've had too. So the combination of that was really good. It was just a real eye opener. And I left that tournament knowing that if you want to do well in sports journalism, you need an incredible lot of sacrifice.
Wow.
But crucially, personal drive. Okay. Without it, I mean, you need that in everything. But in sports, it's even more important.
Interesting.
Because too many media houses won't pay for you to travel. And if you want to be outstanding, you cannot be doing the ordinary things that everybody does.
Okay. Big Mike, for years, you've covered Blackstars games. You've watched them play. It might sound difficult, but you're one Blackstars player that for you is like the best ever for you.
It's not. It's one of the easiest questions for me.
Oh wow!
I'm glad you sent me the questions last night.
That's all you.
And I don't say this with stats or anything. I say this purely with emotion. I think it's Stephen Appiah.
Wow.
I don't think there's. So the thing with Stephen was that he was different. He was a top player, but he was an even better human being. And being the better human being and the leadership qualities he had is one of the main reasons why we qualified for the World Cup.
Wow.
I was a commentator during the 2006 World Cup qualifiers, and I remember literally every single thing. Whenever Steven stepped out in the stadium, everybody was happy. We were playing against Burkina Faso and Uganda is struggling. Steven just pushes everybody around. He just doesn't talk. You understand? He takes the ball and he lays on the crucial pass that leads to a goal. Or that game against South Africa in Johannesburg, which was coming off the back of a game we had played against Congo DR in Kinshasa. And we and South Africa were, I think, if we beat South Africa, we go ahead of them.
Yeah.
Mind you, at this time, the whole country really wanted to be at the World Cup. South Africa had Soccer City. This was also almost like a decade after they had beaten us 3-0. So for some reason, we had become the easy cannon for South Africa. They beat us in the semi-final in 2000 and in 1996. They beat us in the quarterfinal. So there was so much riding on that game. And Steven played unbelievable football that day. Captain, leader, exceptional player, putting on assist. He was really good. And if you watch back to the video of our first World Cup win, where in the midfield, he traps the ball and then plays a pass into Asamoah Gyan's path that takes out to Falouche. A lot of the Czech defenders,
legends.
When you watch every single game of that World Cup, including the penalty that took us into the next round, I find it such a big shame that he didn't play as long in the national team because of injury. But I love him. I think he was unbelievable. Look, there've been a lot of very good players in the Blackstars. My junior brother swears on Abedi Pele. He would go and see Abedi play any day. But in terms of the ones that I followed around more closely and worked with more closely, and I think, by the way, I think Abedi Pele is the greatest Ghanaian footballer ever. I just think in terms of the Blackstars, when it comes to Steven, it was unbelievable. I like what people like Michael Essien brought to the team. Kwadwo Asamoah was good, but in terms of impact, that first World Cup qualification, everything, a lot of it was down to Stephen Appiah.
And he's so humble. He's an usher at church. You know
he
that?
is.
Yeah, our house chapel.
Well, he's as small.
but
he likes church though.
Yeah, looking at his club career, many would say it didn't go well for him. Juventus, he went to Turkey. What happened?
So, one of the few times when I have the chance to chat with Stephen, we talk about these things a bit sometimes. And look, stuff happens. I think it happens. I think that injury when he went to Fenerbahce. But I think when you're a footballer, one of the things I advise a lot of these footballers is to take joy in the things that you achieved. If you told the Stephen who grew up with all his siblings in a single room in Choco that one day football will give him 4 or 5 houses in East Legon. We'll give him, we'll help him, we'll enable him afford shoes that can buy land.
Shada, forget to.
All that. Football is the reason he would travel all around the world, you know, and all that. He would say, I'll take it. If you gave him this career when he started out as House of Folk, he will happily take it. I was in Istanbul airport once and I dropped my passport and the official said, "You're from Ghana?" I said, "Yes." First thing he mentioned was Stephen Appiah.
Wow.
So I want people like Stephen and the rest to take joy in the things they got right. You don't have control over injuries. You understand? But Stephen still played at Juventus for 2 seasons. Stephen still played with Pep Guardiola at Brescia.
Wow.
He played with the great, was it the guy with the ponytail? I was just watching him and Messi right now. Baggio.
Yeah, Baggio.
Thank you. Anyway, this guy said something. I will fight with him afterwards. So, but he played with Baggio.
Yeah.
He had a great career at Parma. You understand?
Yeah.
And I say Stephen has been a blessing to his family, his friends. He has a comfortable home. He built a reputation that has ensured that brands still go to him, whether it's Total and all that, and still use him as an ambassador. He's feeding off that in being a Blackstars management committee vice president. So I say, if I'm Stephen, I say, look on the bright side of life. God has been good to him.
Yes.
His club career could have been way better, but he can't lose sleep over that. He was really good.
Okay. Let's talk BBC. My boss went to BBC and I saw the smiles on his face for like so many months. Walk us through the magic. How did it happen for you? The BBC journey.
There was a Sierra Leonean journalist who was the reporter in Ghana. And I used to work with him because he was a freelance journalist, but he also needed to sublet some part of the work. So we went through that process. And then I think he decided, because he was a bit of a nomad in terms of work, decided he was moving to, I think it was Tunisia. This was to be in good time for the 2004 Nations Cup. So he relocated to Tunisia because they needed a reporter there. The BBC decided that they would not handpick anybody. So they did an advertisement in the Daily Graphic, I remember. And then I had filled in my bid to relocate to England because they said my passport had a problem. So even though I told everybody and went to eat wachi with my friends and I was going to Abuja, I still had to stay. And then went to Joy FM to go and to work at Joy FM for a while. So whilst I was at Joy, they advertised this job. I applied for this job, and this is where sometimes my cockiness comes in, because the moment I saw the job, I knew 100% this was for me.
It's yours.
They brought 2 people from London. It was Paul Bachibinga and then Neil Lennon to come and do the interview. Neil was their chief commissioning editor, so he was the guy who would say, you go here, you go there, you go there. So basically, the most important person in the team. And then I think Martin Davis as well. And we did the interview in the old multimedia building. I think it was me, there was Maurice Kwanzaa, the late Christopher. So basically at the time, a collection of maybe the top sports journalists in Ghana spread across industries. I never considered myself a broadcast specialist. But Maurice is now the editor of Graphic Sports. We all know what Christopher did, and then myself. So all of us went to do the interview, and then I got a call 1 week later that you have the job, and I think I stopped working that day.
Wow.
Because I had to stop working. But afterwards, it was easily the most impactful thing I got very early, because I got it very early. I got it, this was 2003, so this was give and take 4 years after journalism school.
Wow.
The salary was way better than I was earning at Joy, but it was the training opportunities. And I think that's something that I really hope, and I try to do that in my small space to make people we on board understand the systems better. But the training the BBC gives you when they sign you on, it's like attending school from scratch. And I went to journalism school for 2 years, 2 full years. No practical, nothing. You go to the BBC. So I did what we call Broadcast Journalism 1, ground floor of the old Bush House. There are about 20 studios. I came back and used to tell my friends I enjoyed this story. We had something we called the DAT tape. And it was for a mini disc recorder. So back then you have 1 minute disc, you keep it for 20 years. You know, you record and then you take it out and then you record on it and I went to training and they had your microphone, your DAT recorder. And they had a full box of the DAT tapes. There were about 10 in each one. And you know, Ghana boy, I took one, but this was yours. I was using one every 2 years, but this was a full pack and everything. And the BBC, it really grew me. Like, it developed my digital journalism. On that first training, after the training in London, I had already been pegged to cover the World Athletics Championships in Paris.
Wow.
And in those stages, I don't think I understood the magnitude of those things. But I went to Paris, you know, we'll come in live on Fast Track, and did as well as I thought I could. And afterwards, I became basically one of the guys they will phone up and say, okay, there's a tournament in Benin. Can you spend 2 weeks there? So I did the World Africa Under 20 in Benin for like 2 or 3 weeks. As the financial modeling changed, I would pitch competitions and I would get paid for that. So this is an arrangement I use at TV3. So I covered the 2009 African U20 because I always knew that once I got there, I would get enough jobs to fill up. It made me a few enemies within the Ghanaian media. For instance, like Kesben just refusing to pay when I went to Rwanda. Because, you know, because I will fly myself there. I'll get somewhere to sleep. I will eat. How I do that, you don't know. But trust me, I wasn't sleeping in the team hotel because I really hate that. And then so everybody just keeps calling you. And that's something I always tell people. When you do journalism, don't joke with your money issues around it.
Okay.
I think the biggest shortfall of journalism training in Ghana is that journalists are trained to think that what they do is not for money. What you do is for money.
No,
if journalism are trained to understand that what they do is for money, then journalists will understand how well do I monetize YouTube? What do I say not to offend advertisers unduly? It's not the same as what do I say to annoy advertisers.
Okay.
Then journalists will understand that, they would understand the basic principle of pitching. If you got Michael Essien or you got Thomas Partey to interview this morning, how are you able to write an email to the BBC and say, look, I have this interview. I have an exclusive on Partey who says that he's leaving us now tomorrow. Do you have any idea how you will walk through that process? And I really think our schools are not teaching this. I worked with Oluwashino Keleji. Shino does one interview. He will sell the audio here. He will sell the the video here. He will write a web article for Al Jazeera. Among a certain group of us who started up in the early 2000s, pitching was one of our biggest strengths.
Okay.
I can write an email to anybody and say, because now I am a full-time staff at TV3, when I do a party interview, I don't pitch it to anybody.
Yeah.
If you call me and say, oh, I want to use your party interview, I'll happily give you and say, just give credit to the organization. But in the past where I got paid based on everything, I will chat TV3 fully for that interview. I will reserve the right to write a web article out of that for the BBC. I will email Al Jazeera and say if they want a feature on Partey's family life, because I understand that content is what I feed off. But too many times, everybody seems to think that for journalists to make money, it means that they must follow some people. And no, there are legitimate ways of making money. And I really wish that the education of journalists will factor this in, because I meet too many people who are journalists and they don't seem to understand that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Still on sports journalism, let's rate them out of 10. Ghanaian sports journalists, solid out of 10. How much will you give them? How many will you give them?
8.
Wow.
I think Ghanaian sports journalists are some of the best on the continent. It doesn't mean that we're doing everything right. Far from that. But again, I have a simple policy in my mind. You always have to look on the brighter side of life. The glass is half full. So I'll give you multiple examples. I always use Gary as an example. I work with Oreku. There is Bill. There is Yaofo Sulabi. What other quality of journalism do you want to see? Now, people see all these kind of journalists, or Akosi Adjei, or Julia Bewu and the rest, and they don't say that these journalists represent the best qualities in Ghanaian journalists. They will go and pick one video of some guy doing commentary and screaming into the phone and say this is the unprofessional attitude. Or we'll go and pick that unfortunate incident that involved Otuado and the reporter and say this represents Ghanaian sports journalism. No. You will find this happens in multiple places. You will see Jose Mourinho's press conferences, and sometimes they are laughable, but they speak to professionalism and everything. And in my mind, you could pick a lot of Ghanaian sports journalists, drop them in CNN, drop them at BBC, drop them at Al Jazeera, drop them at Sky Sports, and they will not look out of place. And that for me is always how you measure it. So the problem is not the ones who are not doing it well. The other problem is that because we've become sometimes we look down on ourselves, we automatically think that people speaking Twi are not doing journalism right. Which is, in my mind, absolute nonsense. One of the best commentators this country has had is Kofi Asare-Braku. He popularized Abate when nobody did. He knew his audience. He knew that at the time when radio had taken off, GBC had so much monopoly that Asare-Braku could not become a major force by doing commentary in the exact same way that GBC used to do. So Asare-Braku had... We talked about data-driven decision. He had emotional intelligence. He had the knowledge to find a style that was efficient and effective. And he did that superbly. So that for me is a sign of that. Dan Kwaku Yeboah is as educated as any of us, the English journalists. When you go to Kumasi, Bright Kankam Buedu is as big a personality as you can find.
Speaks very well.
But because he speaks Twi, a lot of people are
the perception is different.
And he doesn't go to a major tournament and, is standing like me. I'll go to Blackstars match, I'll stand and I'll record something really nice. But even I have had to adapt my style. I have had to go into Blackstars camp, stand there and be sitting in the sofa, crouched in the sofa, and be saying something very quickly, 1, 2, 3, and posting on social media. Because times have changed. But we still judge things in the same old way. So whilst you have to applaud the quality of work like people like Kawawa, like Fentu, like Gary, like Oreku, like Bill, you also have to look at the quality of work that people like Bright, like Kwaku Yeboah, and the rest have done. The mass appeal they have. Do you know what it means to have mass appeal? You know what it means that somebody who's steady to the highest level likes you, and the guy who doesn't have a clue likes you. And I think sometimes so too many of us go to journalism school. We used to have this argument in journalism school a lot. Oh, the guys are speaking Twi. So famously one day, and then we used to love our sports presenters too, by the way. So we used to joke that when we're listening to the radio, we used to joke that you can swear that this is an article that's being read of Graphic Sports in the morning news. And there was one guy who did it a lot. So when I went on internship at Gold in 98, I sort of understood the complications. Internet was not there, so the newspapers were the biggest thing. The ones who were friends with the players who were based abroad then found an easier way around. So if your company had internet, if I went in the morning to produce a Radio Gold morning show, I'm spending like 1 hour downloading it. Now, I can wake up at 4 in the morning and I will script Sports Daily on TV3 in 30 minutes.
Wow.
Now, I have a structure. I script it rough. I put it in ChatGPT. It scales it down, gives me a director's profile. I'm just utilizing technology.
Apple.
Yes. So so all that process has gone on, and yet we, instead of allowing the technology, instead of teaching our people to become emotionally smarter, we just keep looking down on people. Oh, we're country. You understand? Okay. Like, I have to be honest. When the day that Bill said to me that, because I said, as a rule, I want a lot of influencers to appear on the sports programs that we do. I am conscious of what the times are.
Yeah.
I said to Bill, give me a list. He brought a list. He said, Adjor, he does Prrrr. I said, okay, I don't know about this guy. You go on social media, you search the numbers, and you begin to think, how don't I know about this already? Because if you stay in tune with your industry, you become conscious. Then when you are doing events, you become conscious. You know who to invite, who not to invite, and all that. Does anybody realistically think that anybody picks up a newspaper to read sports again these days? No.
Things have changed.
Everybody does it on their phone. And even on the phone, social media has made it your first. I am sometimes I like to think of myself as a traditional journalist.
Yeah.
I get every single one of my news stories from social media.
Wow.
Whether it's Instagram, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, like I consume a lot of it. It doesn't mean that I will not follow traditional journalists and established media houses. I will, but I am not typically doing www dots to read anything.
Anything again.
Because even on the www dots, and I used to manage the digital platforms at Media General, you know that 80% of the traffic to your website is generated through your social media platforms.
Yeah. Interesting.
So we need to rethink. And yet there are still journalism schools that are teaching digital journalism, and you sit through them and you're thinking, what is this?
Let's end with the Ballon d'Or conversation. The Ballon d'Or. The boys are waiting for that one. How did you get a chance to work with them? You have a say in Ballon d'Or.
It was connection.
It's connection. The connection is big. But why is it always?
Because it was. I think it's a French journalist I met in 2002. He's called Frank Simon. He's quite popular on Twitter and the rest. But he's a French journalist who's covered African football his whole life.
Okay.
So Frank just texted me one morning and said, Michael, Ballon d'Or is expanding. So this was way before the announcement was made. They're making journalists part of the jurors, and we wanted somebody from Ghana.
Okay.
And I thought to put forward your name. That was it.
All right.
Every year, if you get the email and your logins and everything, it means you are voting. If you don't, it means you are not voting. So
okay. So who's winning this year for you?
I have no idea. It's one of those things that I rarely discuss.
What team do you support?
Me. I'll tell you. I saw your question last night. So I talked to you.
People don't know that about you.
So everybody who went to Pukjon with me knows that I grew up supporting Kotoko. Everybody who went to journalism school with me knows that I supported Liverpool.
Oh, wow.
But everybody who knows me also knows that the moment I made a decision that I was doing journalism, and the moment I left journalism school, everybody knows that I stopped supporting everybody until the Blackstars. And I explained the Blackstars to you. The Blackstars is money. My biggest gigs as a sports journalist have come through the Blackstars. So the Blackstars is the reason why I will write one article for a digital magazine in South Africa and get paid maybe like $800 because it's per word.
Wow.
The Ghana is not going to the Nations Cup next year. Ghanaian journalists will lose opportunities from Guardian, from New Frame, from this, from that.
Athletic,
from that.
yeah.
But if we are going to tournaments, you are getting commissions to write article, $800. I want a 2,000 word expansive piece and that sort of thing. So I am invested in what the Blackstars does.
Okay.
Part of it was also because at the time when I was doing the reporting work for the BBC, it was normal that they will pick and choose who goes to major tournaments based on whose country is there.
Okay.
So if Ghana is going to a tournament, I have a better chance of being part of the reporting team. So in 2010, it was myself, Ibrahim Sani. I think Komla Dumo was one of the main presenters for the mainline news. But for the commentary team, it was me, Sani. And the more the Blackstars went through the tournament, the more. So there will be a day like when we played against USA in Rustenburg that I had been assigned to go and be the color commentator for England versus France. The one, I think it was Germany versus France in Port Elizabeth. The one where the ball came down, Frank Lampard's shot came down and it didn't cross the line. Yeah. One of the big triggers for VAR. Yeah. But that was the game I was working on.
Okay.
So I had to watch the game in the hotel. But I was there because they knew that Ghana was a big part of the story. English-speaking players, one of the biggest listeners of the BBC and the rest. and the Blackstars have qualified. So my mindset about the Blackstars is really driven by this.
Okay.
Would I have had that MTN gig when we were playing the Nations Cup last year if the Blackstars was not in? It's an absolute no. So my thinking about the Blackstars is informed more by this than anything else. I don't earn money from Liverpool, so
supporting. Okay, be very honest with me on this one. Do you want to be a sports minister one day or GFA president? Yes or no?
No. I'm not a very good leader. Sometimes I'm too blunt for that.
Okay.
And I don't have the skills to be a good politician.
Okay.
I have a lot of very good political friends. One of the beauties of sports journalism is that you can walk into any space, and if you do it for long, you have friends and all that. I have a lot of friends. Some people think I'm MPP, and I hang out with a lot of MPP people. Like Fifi Boafo is one of my best friends.
Okay.
You know, but I also have very good friends in the NDC. The Deputy Chief of Staff, Stan Dugbe, was my schoolmate. When he got a job, some of my classmates are calling me, Michael, want to see Stan? I said, I still have to wait in queue myself as well. But I don't have the energy for that. I don't have the energy. I don't have the appetite. I don't have the commitment for that. There are a few things that sometimes I still think I'll study to become a lawyer. Okay. So that when I get into my 50s, I have a chance to not to chase people. The recent trip to London taught me something. You know, it's fun, but joke, you know. Just sit in the lobby and just wait. So Kudus walks in, you are just videoing them. This guy walks in,
some of us can't wait to.
Is it?
Some of us can't wait.
You will get there. It's not that complicated. Trust me. It's actually sometimes when it starts. Serious, yeah. Look, the first time I went to London, I had attempted to relocate to London. I had been told that I had a visa. I went back to the embassy to pick, and they called me to the booth and said, so these were the days when you go and when they are talking to you, everybody can see. It's like the way when they bounce you at the American embassy, everybody knows that you've been bounced. And then they said to me, your visa has been approved, but there's a problem with your passport. If you can get it, you can get a new passport today and tomorrow. But the stuff that I was traveling with, which was Ghana versus Scotland friendly, before the Asian squad that went to finish second at the World Cup, under 20 World Cup, the match was taking place the following evening. If I didn't get the visa that day, there was no point. I cried that day a lot. Wow. It was Kojo Fianu who consoled me. But what happened? 2 years down the line, I walked into the British High Commission, and I walked in because I had been appointed a BBC sports correspondent. The media office held me with the process. I went through there. I didn't even queue. I just went through the visa process done. And then the last time I was supposed to be going to South Africa. And then I think I was renovating my house. I was staying in Chado. And somebody climbed to the second floor and stole my bag, my laptop bag and everything.
Oh, wow.
And my passport was there, but I was going to travel the day after. The day after that. But I still walked into the passport office the following day and still got my passport back in good time. I'm just saying that maybe one of the things that too many young journalists and the rest do is that they compare their beginning to somebody's 10, 15 years.
Okay.
You understand? Stephen Appiah will tell you this. I used to stress a lot about covering Ghana games. There were many times when I was convinced I was traveling and I wouldn't travel again. These days, I have the capacity to be able to call up a company and say, look, I am going to this game. I'm doing it for TV3. Would you pay for the hotel? Would you do this? And then I am not spending any bit of my money on that. Or I have the capacity to earn enough to pretend like the Blackstars match in London is a good opportunity for me to see my sister and because I was there with my nephew throughout in the team hotel and everything, and have the luxury of being able to pay for the team hotel myself when in the past I couldn't afford it. But this was the same me who used to stand outside the Blackstars hotel in Kumasi, Micklin, because I couldn't afford to get in.
Yeah.
So it will come.
Guys,
nobody will bounce you visa again.
Amen. Wow, he's a blessed man. I was preparing for this interview and I got to know giving back to society is very easy for him. That's why more guests come to him. That's why he's blessed. I see him trip to villages to do charity works and stuff. I saw when I was preparing for this.
It's just the small things.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah,
it's the small things. So So I'm a rotary. I barely go to meetings. It's too much work. But if my friends like Fento, like Muftau, if they are running any project, the other thing that I think schooling is the easiest way by which you lift people up. So if occasionally you see 1 or 2 people who need maybe 5,000 to go to school and you think you can afford that, because once you how the best girls. So I really think I do the calculation. Okay, I have only one son to look after. If I can do that for somebody, I would do it. I did it with a few people who came on internship. There was one boy who came on internship, and I think that too many young people are exploited in Ghana.
Okay.
So you have all these things, all these places saying they are media schools. They know they are not accredited. They know their 6-month course will not do anything for the kid, and they still take their money. They walk into media houses. A lot of media houses don't want to take them. So I asked one boy, I said, why did you go to one? And he said, oh, I completed SS and I just couldn't afford to. So I joked, I can make very expensive jokes sometimes. I said, why, you didn't pass? Because in my mind, that's the first thing that comes to mind. On reflection, I've become better because that was a bit insensitive. And he said, no, I got a certain aggregate, which was very good. It was better than I did in SS. But I got admission to KNUST, but because my parents couldn't pay, I had to take this option and then work for some time. So I simply just said, bring me your... first of all, you need to see evidence. Let me see your results. And I happily paid for him through journalism school. Wow. I do those things because, there were times when I needed people to help me pay my sister's fees when my father died. You have to be clear in your mind about what you've been blessed with and what you can also give off. Plus, if you spare 1,000 cedis once in a while to buy chairs for kids in school in the northern region, they may never know. One of the best calls I had was, I think I helped somebody through SS some really long time ago. I don't even remember. And then I got a call out of the blue one day from one of the kids having completed university thanking me. I like that, and I kind of feel, because I get a lot of lucky breaks. I'm not going to lie to you. I get many. Look, I got that MTN thing when I had stepped out of sports journalism for so long. I do significant work for MTN on sports content, whether it's the MTN FA Cup, so they'll bring in Scanty and the rest come and take some of the money with the Vox Pops and all that. But but they never take away yours as well. You understand? Like it's just I like the fact that through the changing faces and the rest, I am able to reinvent my relevance. And sometimes I think it's the spirit of the good you've done paying you back.
It happens. Big Mike, thank you for coming. It's an honor. Guys, Prrrr is big. My name is Adjor. Charlie, Experience D. We out.